Hello there, everyone. I'm Louise Chown, and I'm from Manitoba in the middle of Canada. And I'm really thrilled to be giving another workshop at the Chennai Festival. I just got the last part of the one before me, and it sure looked interesting. And I just think it's a wonderful festival. So today I would like to talk about, I'm calling it the story well, because I feel that we all have a deep well of stories, whether we're storytellers or not, but definitely if we're storytellers. And sometimes we're called upon to help other people tell their stories. And so what I want to share today with you are some of the ways that I go deep into a story that I would like to tell. And then we'll do a few exercises. You'll probably maybe want to have a piece of paper and a pencil to make some notes, just jot some things down before we go into these breakout groups. But I'm hoping that either these will be familiar with you and you've already done some of this for yourself or for others, or maybe it'll be something a little bit new. And of course, it's always lovely to learn something just a little bit new or another aspect. So here we go. And I wanted to start off by saying that I've probably been telling stories since about the late 1970s. And at first, it didn't seem to me that it was an art form. It was more, I was a teacher and I was telling stories in my class. It was an educational form, but I've come through the years to realize storytelling encompasses just about everything you could possibly imagine: community, art, ritual, sacredness, education, teaching. And so, of course, like a lot of storytellers that are here today, you start discovering the more you tell the same story over and over and over again. And I do encourage you, don't just tell a story once, tell it over and over again, because you keep learning things from it. Again, I'm probably not saying anything new to the storytellers here. But then the more I looked into, well, not just folk tales, I suppose the folk tale is my favorite form, which includes tales and legends and everything like that. But then when I started telling the mythological stories, I was struck by the fact that I felt that of course, the folk tales did have that deeper meaning that the mythological stories tell. And I want to read you something from Max Luthi. He's no longer alive, but he wrote about fairy tales. And don't worry if you don't need to write this down or anything. It's quite likely, he writes, that behind many features in our fairy tales, there are old customs and beliefs, but in the context of the tale, they have lost their original character. Now, I recently came across the work of a German philosopher, and I think I'm going to put her name in the chat. If I can do that. We'll see, eh? No, I don't know. I'm not that clever. Whoops.
Mary Louise, just for a moment, I'll put her on the big screen.
Okay, thanks.
Can you see?
Yes, thank you. I thought you should see it written out because I won't pronounce it quite properly, and then we'd have to go into all the spelling, but she's a very interesting person to look into her work.
Okay, now I'll paste this in the chat section.
Okay, great. Thanks, Eric. All right. Now, I'm not saying that her work is going to deal with every possible story we're learning, but the first story I'm going to tell you, I found her work quite illuminating. And then we'll talk about, of course, other stories. she has some intriguing theories about fairy tales and how the matriarchal worldview is kept alive in a hidden form. She calls the fairy tale a veiled myth. And she feels that it contains and conveys the same spiritual message as the myth and is also equally complex. And of course, those of us here who tell folk tales would of course agree. On the surface, a folk tale seems quite simple, but the more you dig into it, it is very complex. So my plan is to tell you a short story so that we can then work with that story with some of the exercises that I'm suggesting. Okay, how's everybody so far? Good?
Good.
All right. This is a story of a woman who was a widow. And it's found in Brothers Grimm and in many other stories, collections. She had 2 daughters. One daughter was very industrious and did a lot of hard work and was very obedient. And the other daughter was lazy. Strangely enough, the mother loved the lazy daughter more than the industrious daughter. Now, some say it was because the industrious daughter, whoops, hang on a minute, something happened to my computer and I'm gone. Wait, whoa, dear.
No, you're still with us.
Oh, good. Can you see me? Because I can't see me.
We can see you.
Okay, I'll keep going and worry about this after. Oh, okay, so, okay, I was telling you that it was because the industrious daughter was her stepdaughter. Now, the industrious daughter, or the good daughter, however you want to call that, as I said, she had most of the work to do, a familiar thing in folk tales. She might have even been the younger one. It doesn't really say. It doesn't say the order in this story. Now, one of the things, we know this is an older story, is she had a lot of spinning to do with just a handheld spindle. So you could be anywhere you liked with those handheld spindles. She used to like being outside and often sitting beside the well, spinning. Well, one day she was spinning and, well, she did it so much that her fingers started to bleed and some of the blood got on the spindle. So she thought she would just dip the spindle into the well and clean it. Well, it slipped out of her fingers and fell into the water and disappeared. Oh my goodness, what was she going to do now? She's waited and waited and watched, and she thought maybe it will float back up to the surface. It is wood after all, but it had gone straight down. It never reappeared. And so she ran home to tell her mother. Well, her mother berated her, "You stupid girl, go and get it. It's a good spindle. Don't come home without that spindle." Well, she went back to the well and no, it hadn't floated up to the top. She couldn't see the bottom of the well. It was very deep. What was she going to do? Her mother said, "Don't come home without that spindle." And so she jumped into the well. Well, she was knocked senseless by the descent through the water. It was as if she fell asleep or lost consciousness. And when she came to again, well, she wasn't in the well. She was in the world. It looked like her world, but it felt different. And so she started to walk. There were woods and meadows and rivers and streams. And well, she came to an orchard of apple trees, and the trees were just laden with apples. They were almost touching the ground. They were so heavy with fruit. And they called out to her, "Oh, please pick us, please pick us. We don't want to fall onto the ground and get bruised. Please, please pick us." And so she picked as many apples as she could reach, very gently and carefully, and she laid them and gathered them in a pile on the ground underneath the trees and left them there. Because what else could she do? She was the only one around. And she kept on walking, and she saw a cow lying in the grass. And the cow's udders were full and bursting with milk. And the cow called out to her, "Oh, please milk me. Oh, please milk me. My udders are so full, they're painful." And she crouched right down then and there and milked the udders dry. There was a pail right there. She filled the pail and left it. And then she continued on, and she came to one of those great big outdoor baking ovens, all made of clay and bricks. And it was hot all around it. And the door to the oven was closed, but she could hear something calling, "Oh, please, please take us out of the oven. Our bread will be burned if you don't. Please, please, we're finished baking." Well, she did have her apron on, and so she took her apron and used it to open the hot handle of the oven door. And she used the bread, well, it's sort of like a paddle, I guess, a wooden paddle, to pull the bread out of the oven. And she left it there to cool on the side of the oven. And she continued on. Finally, she came to a small house. Oh, it was beautiful, though. Everything just looked well cared for, and it looked happy and welcoming. And there was a beautiful garden of flowers all around, and a gate with an archway. And then the door opened, and a woman came out of the house, an old woman, and she smiled at the good daughter. Oh, and her teeth were sharp. And for a minute, the good daughter felt scared. But then the old woman said to her, "Oh, don't be afraid of me, my daughter. Don't be afraid of me. Come, stay with me and work for me, and I will look after you, and you'll have everything." Well, she probably didn't have any choice. Where else would she go? And she agreed to stay with the old woman. The old woman said, "Every day I want you to make my bed and clean the cottage and shake out my feather eider down, because when I shake my eider down, the snow falls on the earth. For I am Mother Holla." Mother Holla. She stayed, and she did everything that Mother Holla asked her to do. The food was out of this world. Lovely, rich meat stews, fresh baked bread, fruit, vegetables. And old Mother Holla was so kind, and she had a beautiful bed to sleep in. In fact, she was 1,000 times better off there than back in her other home. But after about a year, for some reason, she became homesick. And she said to Mother Holla, "I have to go back home." "That's good," said Mother Holla. "I will take you there myself. Come." And she took her out of the house, and she led her to the gate with the arch over it. And when she opened the gate and the girl was under the arch, it felt as if it was going to rain, but really rained gold down on the girl, and she was covered from head to foot in gold. "You have served me well," said Mother Holla. "Here." And she gave her the spindle. And the next thing she knew, she was back in her own world. And when she got home for the first time, because she was all covered in gold, her mother and her sister greeted her warmly. "And where have you been? And what happened to you?" And so she told them everything, every detail that she could remember. And the mother said to the other sister, "You go and get some gold too, girl. Off you go now." And so the lazy sister, she went off with her spindle, and she sat at the edge of the well. she didn't spin very much, not enough to make her fingers bloody. So she had to go and prick one of her fingers on thorn bush. And then she rubbed that blood all over the spindle, and then she dropped it in the well. And then she jumped in afterwards. And sure enough, when she sort of regained her senses, she was where the good daughter had described. There was the apple orchard with the trees all laden with apples, calling out to her, "Oh, please pick us, please. We don't want to fall on the ground and get bruised. Please pick us." Oh, I don't want to come and have to shake the tree or even climb into it. Besides, the apples might fall on my head and hurt me. And she just walked on. And when she came to the cow and the cow urged her, "Oh, please milk me. My udders are full to bursting and they're painful." She said, "Oh, I don't want to milk a cow and get all icky and covered with milk." And she just walked on. And when she came to the bake oven and she could hear the bread calling out, "Oh, please, please take me out of the oven. I'm done. Please, please. I don't want to burn." She said, "Oh, it's way too hot and I'll get all flour all over me." No. She was looking for the house where Mother Holla lived. She wanted to get there quickly, and she wanted to get that gold. And sure enough, she came to the house. Well, Mother Holla opened the door and opened her mouth and smiled, and she saw the sharp teeth, but she knew that she couldn't be afraid. And Mother Holla said, "Well, welcome, daughter. Come and work for me. And I will treat you really well and reward you." "Yes," she said. And in she came, and well, the first day she did everything with such industry. Oh, the second day, little less. And as the days wore on, less and less and less, until some days she didn't even get out of bed, just got out of bed supper time when she could smell that lovely meat stew cooking. So finally, Mother Holla said, "It's time for you to go home." Oh, that's what she was waiting for. Now she's going to get the gold. "Okay, I'll go back home," she said. And Mother Holla said, "I'll show you the way." And she took her to the gate, or the archway over the gate. And she opened the gate, and the girl went under the arch. And again, it was like it was raining. But this time it wasn't gold that was raining down. It was black tar, covered the girl from head to foot. And the next thing she knew, she was back in her own world. And imagine the horror of her mother and her sister when she walked into the house covered in tar. And neither one of them, as hard as they tried, could get the tar off her. And so she was covered in tar for the rest of her life. And now I have to figure out how to get back here. I'm going to just do a little bit of not sure what to do here. I don't know what I've done to the computer, so bear with me, please. Maybe.
Mary Louise, can you see us?
No, you know what I'm going to do? I was going to put us into breakout groups. So why don't we do that first one? And then while we're in the breakout group, I can figure this out. I
Okay.
suppose it doesn't matter if you can't see me, or if I can't see you, as long as you can see me, but I
No,
would
we
like to
can-
see
We
everyone.
can see and hear you loud and clear, and that was a very beautiful telling of that story. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Now Holla it's sometimes pronounced just Hall, like H-A-A-L, but sometimes it's pronounced Holla. It's spelled Holle in most of the stories, if anyone is looking for that story.
But
Okay,
of course, she's Mother Nature. Because you know the giveaway is that when we fluff her feather mattress, it snows in the world.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, well, here is what I'm going to suggest is, I don't know how many, are there about 30 people, or have some of those left
Yeah,
now?
there's 32 in the Zoom, but only about 12 or 13 of us with our cameras on. What will people discuss in the breakout rooms? So what will they
Okay.
do?
It would be good to have your camera on when you're in the breakout room if you're talking with somebody else. Okay, my first breakout room. First of all, I would say take a few minutes and jot down in a word or two, or you can draw it if you like. When you think about the story you just heard, is there one section or segment that right away comes to mind, like a scene or an image when you think of the story of Mother Hulla? And just jot it down. Then in your breakout groups, I would like you to do it in twos for this first breakout group, where some of you probably are familiar with this. One is the listener and one is the teller. And so you take your turn. One of them decides to be the teller and tell the listener what's the image or the scene, if you could describe it, that comes to mind when you think about that story. And then switch, and the person who was the listener then gets to say, well, here's where I would kind of settle on what is a scene from the story. What part of the story just comes right to mind. And it's, again, usually an image or a scene. Sometimes it's a word, so don't edit it too much, but the first thing that comes to your mind. So you're going to share back and forth. And I would say, if you're the listener, you don't need to say things like, oh yeah, I agree. Oh yeah, that was great. Just accept what the teller says. And then you could ask a question for clarification, sort of like, oh, did you mean this? Or did you mean that? And that's about it. And I think that maybe, oh golly, 3 or 4 minutes each person. So we're only looking at about 8 minutes for those breakout groups. How does that sound?
So did you want it groups of 2 or 3?
2.
2.
If it's possible, it might be a group of 3, depending on the time, on the numbers.
Yes, because right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's 3 groups of 2, and we have a new person, but she hasn't heard the story. 3
Well, she
groups
could
of
listen.
she can listen. Maybe she should be in a Selena, can you hear me?
I heard the story. I'm just in my kitchen cooking. That's why my camera was off.
Wonderful. You just turned on your camera. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to make groups of 2 of people who are here. Just give me a second. Okay. 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 Okay, I think I have everyone. Oh, June and Vina, just a second. Okay, well, first of all, let me stop recording.
Room. I'm going to say, take a few minutes, maybe, Eric, give everybody, a couple of minutes before you assign breakout rooms. Some of you have done this before as well. You would probably say that, who is the main character in this story? well, it could be Mother Holla, it could be the industrious daughter. Let's just say, for sake of argument, it's the industrious daughter. I want you to take somebody else in that story or something else and retell the story from that point of view. Let's say it could be the spindle. It could be the lazy daughter or the mother. It could be Mother Holla. It could be the apple tree, the cow. And, start like you can start with once upon a time. There was an apple tree sort of. Now my reason for that is something I learned from a couple of storytelling masters, I would say, from Toronto, at the Marilyn Perringer and Linda House, whenever they taught their storytelling courses. I've never forgotten this. They always said, you love every character in the story. And this is if you tell a personal story, a mythology story, a folk tale, a fairy tale, a legend, you love every character. And the work of learning and deepening a story is to see it from the point of view of more than one character. And it's kind of fun too, the things you find out when you take the apple tree or the spindle. So I would say, don't try to be clever. Whenever I said another character, if one popped into your mind, just then go with that. It's just for the exercise. You can try it another time with a different character, but go with the first one that comes into your mind and just play with it. And you can tell the story, and it doesn't have to be exactly the same, because let's say it's the spindle. Like, where would you start that story? Where would you end it? Which spindle, the one that gets returned or the one that the lazy daughter throws down? The story never says what happens to that. Okay, so take a couple of minutes and jot down and think about how you'd want to retell that story. And then we'll go into breakout groups. And I think 2 people is probably still good, because that gives people a chance to really tell each other their version of the story. Now, you might have to help each other, because let's say you're the one telling the story and you go, I can't remember now, did she see the apple tree first and then the cow and then what did she eat at Mother Holly's? And the other person you could say, I can't remember. Maybe the listener could say, well, maybe it doesn't matter if she meets the apple tree first or the cow, so you could help each other if you get stuck. But for the rest of the point, just listen to each other's retellings. And I think everybody should get at least 5 minutes for the retelling. So this should be a 10-minute break and a couple of minutes before to think about it. How does that sound? I know it's probably late at night for some of you. You probably want to go to bed.
Mira, are you still with us? Mira?
Yeah.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Okay, well, yeah, if you'll keep your camera on, then we can send you into a breakout room.
Oh, sure.
Oh,
Okay,
I
so-
see.
Yeah, I'm only
Oh.
putting in people in breakout rooms with their camera on. But Mary Louise has invited us to write for a couple of minutes before we go into breakout rooms, to write about if we would tell the story from the point of view of a character or object in the story, which character or object would we choose to speak as?
And you don't have to write long sentences. Just jot down the idea, like spindle, ugly daughter, where are you? That type of thing. Don't take, don't do a lot of writing.
Okay, so we'll just stay here for two or 3 minutes and think and write.
Okay.
Mary Louise, do you think that's enough time?
Yes, that is definitely.
Okay, so now I'm putting everyone in mostly the same breakout rooms with just a couple little variations. Okay,
All
so
right.
this will be for about 10 minutes?
Yeah, give each other 5 minutes. Can we give them a 5-minute switch
Yes,
tellers?
you can. And I
Okay.
think it's helpful if you say a word or two about the value, the point, the benefit of telling the story from different points of view.
Well, yes, of course. It makes the story what I would call thicker. I don't know if all of you have noticed sometimes when you hear a storyteller, it looks as if they've kind of just put the coat on and they're telling you a story. And then you hear another storyteller and the story sounds like it's coming from their spine or their heart. It's as if they've eaten up the story and now they're just giving it back. And that's what my wish is, that when you tell your stories, it's like you've eaten them almost, and they're part of you and you're just wanting to give them away. But that's by looking at every aspect of the story and treating every part of it as important. And so that's why this little fun thing about telling it from a different point of view comes about.
Okay. Here we go.